Welcome everybody, but especially Dan Donovan, Congressman Donovan. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for joining us. Now, how do I know Dan Donovan? Not because I was in Congress, but because I ran, like Peter's running now for high office, I ran for the U.S. Senate. In 2010, you were running for Attorney General, I believe, of the state.
Yep.
And I think you were already the district attorney.
I was.
For Staten Island. Right. When I was a congressman, you're talking about 1985 to 89, we had 34 members of Congress from New York State, 17 Republicans, 17 Democrats. Think about it, your own New York State.
Those are the good old days.
Now we're down. Why is the Northeast losing power? I don't mean power to run anything, I mean power, political power. We're down to 27. Why? Florida, Texas, California, Georgia, North Carolina are all growing. We're not growing. We're staying still and maybe decreasing a little bit, and that's a problem. So the beauty of our system is that the House of Representatives is representing the people, and they don't change the number of congressmen. So they have to reallocate every 10 years how many people are represented by the same number of congressmen. So now we're down from 34 to 27, and I believe we have maybe
9 Republicans.
up to 9 now, up to 9. So at least we've got 9 now, but I think we were way below that a couple of years ago.
But I'm the only one from New York City.
Right, right. And the closest one to you is another good friend of ours, Lee Zeldin, out in Suffolk County. Now, the interesting thing about Staten Island is it's one of the few counties that I won when I ran for the U.S. Senate.
Interesting.
But it has a very large population of Albanian Americans, mainly from what is now called Macedonia. Albanians get very kind of upset when people say, you know, he's from Macedonia. They don't consider themselves from those states. They consider themselves from the ancestral lands that are in those states today, called Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Northern Greece. Well, Kosovo is 95% Albanian, and then you have Albania. So you've got 6 countries. Now, if you drew a line, Dan, around the 7 million Albanians, they're all contiguous.
Right.
This was the nation that emerged from the Ottoman Empire in 1912. They put their own flag up, but they weren't recognized by anybody. And unfortunately, it took years and years, up until probably 1921, before they realized that there had to be an Albanian state. Would you believe that from 1912 to 1921, when Yugoslavia was formed as a state, as part of the settlement after World War I, there were people who said, Albanians, they're not a separate race, they're Slavs. So you had a lot of adversarial people running around while the Ottoman Empire was crumbling. That last 100 years, the Greeks got out in 1846, the Serbs got out in 1860. Right away, they started talking against the Albanians because the Albanians had made their peace with the fact that they were occupied 425 years and they were going to be there forever, and they got all the best positions. So the Greeks were jealous, the Serbs were jealous, and they didn't want anything to say anything good about Albanians. So the West started hearing, oh, these Albanians are bad people, bad people, bad people. By the time they announced their independence, already the lobby had worked, and they were thinking, hey, these Albanians are not going to get a state. It took a U.S. president, Woodrow Wilson, to make the compromise that half those 7 million people would be put in a state called Albania, and the other half, they left them on the borders in 5 other political jurisdictions. That's how complicated. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
This is how complicated the world is today for the Albanian people, because now they've got families living in those states. Each one of those states has its own politics. When I do any lobbying with Shirley, we have to understand what's going on in those states. Why aren't Albanians being represented in those governments fairly? And that's the problem we have in Macedonia. And that's why I wish you were at the hearing, but you have your own problems. I just testified about a month ago at the
This was
Foreign
in the
Affairs
subcommittee.
and
You're-
Rohrbacher's.
Oh,
But I'm
is that
gonna-
right? Dane's,
yeah.
Dane's
Yeah, right.
subcommittee?
I'm going to send you the testimony. I'll send you the DVD we have on it, so your staff can hear what the issues are. And the written testimony will come out soon too, because focusing on Macedonia, which is what we're going to do today. We have people here from Albania, we have them from all over, and our lead represents them all. Represents mainly American interests. I mean, we're not a foreign agent. Foreign agents, as you know, have to register
Right.
Department of Justice. No, we are very strict in our way we do things, so that anything we do, even when we're at hearings, the key is what is in the interest of the United States of America. All right? And when you can say that we've got in this country 750,000 Albanians with families, now we're concerned about their families over there. And that's basically what I've used for 29 years. 4 years as a congressman, 25 years as an independent, unpaid representative, advocate for the Albanian people, for their self-determination, for their human rights, and things like that, okay? And as you can see, we've been very successful because we've been able to even create a new state called Kosovo. Without the Albanian American Civic League, there would not be a new state called Kosovo. We took on Milosevic, we got him indicted. You were probably not involved in the Congress in those days. Shirley and I got the Congress of the United States of America to indict this guy as a war criminal right after the war. He was only indicted a year later by the international community and brought to The Hague, and Shirley and I went there to testify
I wrote
against him.
the major testimony against Milosevic for The Hague.
So we targeted Milosevic, figuring that if we can get rid of him, because he was the biggest enemy of the Albanian people. Now, there are new Milosevic's, by the way.
Yes.
This guy, and now let me shift right away, because I don't want to make this a history course. Gruevski, who has controlled Macedonia for the last 10 years or so, is as bad. He hasn't killed anybody with a gun, with AK-47s, but many people have been killed. Many Albanians, falsely arrested, falsely put on trial, long prison sentences, and we're still dealing with that. But one of the reasons we had this hearing, and Shirley and I had to lobby hard for it, because, as you know, Rohrbacher is involved with a lot of things that Eurasia and Europe Committee, and he was more interested, and is still more, in his own mind, he's thinking Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, where the action is for the United States of America. Macedonia is kind of like a sidebar for most people. But you've got, in our count, 800,000 Albanians in Macedonia, and maybe more than 1 million. We believe half the people of Macedonia are Albanian, but they don't let you count. They don't like census data. They want you to use the old communist system, just undercount and carry it forward. And one of the first experiences I had, and I got arrested for it, was going there in 1992 on a census that was created by the Albanian people, because in '92 they wanted to separate from the Slavs by having their own federation. In other words, like Yugoslavia represented 6 republics and 2 provinces, federation. They said, well, we probably can't change the state Macedonia, so at least let us have control with our own budget for education, judiciary, things like that in our areas, because there are areas in Macedonia which are specifically Albanian, believe it or not. There are other areas that have become mixed, but many Albanians live in the western part of Macedonia. All right? The other part of Macedonia is mainly ethnic Bulgarians and Serbs that moved in, because one of the things the Serbs did over the years after World War II was to recolonize Kosovo, Serbia with Serbs. This was Tito and then Milosevic to make some kind of a control for them. It didn't work, but what's happened is we've had corrupt political leaders getting control, and we're now fighting on how to get rid of them there, in Kosovo and Albania. The problem is that they've gone from communism to corruption. This is the biggest problem the United States has. We don't like to talk about it because we figure Europe now is going to take care of it. But these guys and ladies know from the area, Europe never takes care of anything when it comes to Albanians. We always have to go in to clean up the mess. So my message is, let's not wait for that mess. That's what I said at this hearing. from the State Department. There are things we can do now. The United States has to be more involved. We have to be vigilant. We have to, now, in Macedonia in particular, hang on, we got to be sure that the promises made 15 years ago, endorsed by the United States of America and the European Union, called the Ohrid Agreement, O'Hare Agreement, there's two words that are used, where this was the settlement of the war that spilled over from Kosovo into Macedonia, where they had their own army. And to settle that, we had to get the United States and Europe and the leaders in Macedonia, and the key one then was Arben Jaferi, the person we worked with the most. He died of Parkinson's disease. So we were stuck without a good leader. We tried to continue, but what happened was in those 15 years, the Slavs are very smart. They bought off the Albanian leaders. They know how to use money. They know how to use coercion. They know how to use patronage in the soft sense. And right now you've got pretty much close to a mafia state that is just building parties and rich families, and the Albanian people are left behind. Now, did I say it right or not?
You said it right,
Yes, sir.
If I say anything that you guys don't agree with, please speak up, because I'm considered a troublemaker. State Department, no, really. State Department, Dioguardi is a troublemaker. Yeah, troublemaker.
Friends, you're a troublemaker.
No, that's looking for justice. Justice. And I can't be bought. I'm not looking for titles, I'm not looking for a job, and I'm not looking to get paid. That's dangerous for people who want to use money. Shirley and I are advocates for this group of people. Now, how did it start that I have this love for the Albanian people? When I got to Congress, Albanians found out my father spoke Albanian as well as Italian. Did I know about the history of why Albanians got to Italy? No, because my parents had no education. They came here as poor farm people from the southern part of Italy. But I was educated so fast by hundreds and thousands of Albanians who came to my home, came to my office. They said, Joe, you are a Bresh. Your people saved our language. While the Turks chased us out of Albania in the middle of the 15th century, it was those Catholic monks, the Arbrecht, because in those days, and we're not trying to make this religious, all Albanians were Catholic and Orthodox. It was the Ottoman Empire, 425 years, that put the screws on them, and after that time, people say, hey, we need to support our families here. Can't get away from these people. So, but they became nominally Muslims. You don't see them running around with headscarves and burqas and things like that. But you can't believe the violent language used against the Albanians, drug dealers, fundamentalists, jihadists. You know, we have to face this. Public relations. And Albanians do not spend any money on public relations. They have to spend their money on survival. See these guys here? A lot of the money they make, they send right back there to keep the families alive. The largest families in Europe today are the Albanian families. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And they haven't stopped. That's what's got the Slavs all nervous, because they are, like the Greeks, not even replacing themselves. Less than 2 kids a family. Albanians have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they see that they have to deal with it now, because later on, these may become Albanian states. Am I right?
Yes.
And Macedonia would be at the top of the list. Do we sell that? No. And do we really want that? Well, you know, when you're not being served by your government, and so much injustice is being put on your people, and you can't get jobs, because here, when we signed that Ohrid Agreement 15 years ago, one of the first things it was supposed to do was to give the Albanian people a representative number of jobs in the government, because those are the only jobs around. That's what the parties did. They built a state on parties, and they gave jobs to who supported them. So the problem is, when you don't have a job, how do you support your family? Where's your dignity? Thank God these men were driven out, many of them, not these two, by Milosevic. Now they're all over Europe making money. I went to Berlin. 300, in Berlin alone, restaurants owned by Albanians. And you got to see these upscale restaurants. Unbelievable.
5-star.
And they make plenty of money. Why? And they have to send it back. The bulk of their families are still living there. Albanians are tied to their land. Look what happened after the Kosovo War. 1 million people driven by this New Age Hitler, Milosevic, out of Kosovo, and he had the idiocy to put them on railroad cars, and we already had the Jewish lobby on our side. Then the Jews figured out who he was for sure, because it was all over TV. 1 million of them in camps in Macedonia. As soon as the war was over, they came back. Every one of them came back. Every house was destroyed. You couldn't believe the reconstruction that went on. And most of that money came from where? Right here, United States of America, yes. Sons and daughters. These are the Albanian people. No one has been able to assimilate them in thousands of years. Not the Romans, not the Greeks, not the Serbs, not the Turks. They've tried to extinguish their religion, couldn't be done. Thank God for the Arbresh, my father's people. Today you have 51 Albanian-speaking villages in southern Italy, still speaking the language. We brought them to the parade that I know you tried to come, so that they could hear them. Mm-hmm. And there were tears in their eyes, that here they're still speaking kind of an older form of the Albanian, but it's 80% at least. They understand each other, but some Italian words have crept in already. So it's an amazing story that they're still standing. That's how good these people are. And who are the most pro-American people in Europe today? The Albanian people. Am I saying something wrong?
Yes, sir.
Go any place. Look at Bush when he went to Albania. 400,000 people. USA! USA!
90 seconds.
We were begging Bill Clinton to recognize a new place called Kosovo. He wouldn't do it. We dragged him kicking and screaming. And I'm not going to get into the politics of the Democrats and Republicans on this, but we got support from both sides. And I'll give you all the great names that we've used. But we pushed them kicking and screaming. Look at my YouTube things on CNN, how I went on to say, how? You can't let what happened in Bosnia happen now in Kosovo. We lost 250,000 innocent people killed. And that's now going to happen in Kosovo, because the biggest prize for the Serbs has always been Kosovo. They say it's their Jerusalem. They lost a battle in 1389 fighting the Turks side by side, Christian Albanians, and right afterwards they claimed this is their Jerusalem. They are, what did J. Edgar Hoover write about communism? Masters of Deceit, remember that book? I remember the Jesuits wanted us to read that book. They hated communism. Masters of Deceit. And that's what they are today. You cannot believe any Slav, whether it's a Russian, whether it's a Serb, whether it's Macedonian. They have no moral values when it comes to this kind of thing. And even Greece, the religions there, you got to understand, the Orthodox religions are like this with the state. We believe in separation of church and state, and they fool a lot of Americans. Oh, we're Christian just like you. Yeah, but you're taking your orders from the government. We separate church and state. They don't. And that's another thing that affects the Albanians. So, point is, thank God, at least Clinton dropped the bombs on Serbia. That stopped Milosevic. We got him indicted. But then we had to work from the year 2000 to the year 2008 to form this state called Kosovo. And that's what we did. And Bush. Now, everybody was talking about Clinton. See Fatan here? He organized a group of young Albanians. He's been working with us since 2002. He goes back and forms, he's educated at Harvard here, and this is the benefits of America. He goes back, forms a group, and gets 1 million signatures called Neskrimi in Albanian. We take that to Henry Hyde. You know Henry?
Yep.
Great man, right? Henry Hyde was the chairman of the committee after Gilman and after Dante Fasel, and then just before Lantos. And he brought those signatures, because we asked him to the White House. That's what got George W. Bush to recognize Kosovo. And that was done in 2008. Look at the distance between the war and 2008. We did that. It's all on film. I got Henry Hyde sitting in his foreign affairs room that's now called the Hyde Room, right? Doing that. So, basically, what we're here for is, number one, to support you as a great American. I know who you are, and they know who you are.
Thank you.
Your family, I still have your father's, Dan Donovan Sr. Great. He was a conservative leader from Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Right. One of the first ones to support me.
Thank you, buddy.
And I really appreciate that. But your family's good. You're a great American, and we want to be sure that you have not only enough for your own race, because I don't think you're ever going to be beat here, but I want you, excuse me, just pull up a seat there.
Yeah, we're gonna need.
We know how, and I want to tell them how it works. You really don't need, in my mind, much money to win. But what you need money for, and they need you to have it, is to get seniority and power in Congress. You need to get to the point, and I did a lot, and we're now doing this with Rohrabacher. Rohrabacher cannot lose that race either. But he needs money to keep his position as chairman of that committee, and one day we want you to be chairman. Don't you want him to be the chairman of Foreign Affairs?
I'd like to be chairman of Foreign Affairs too.
All right, there it is. So what we got to do is we got to educate the Albanian people, and we're starting here, because we've got 2 people here now that are co-chairman of this dinner that are very active in this community, and especially from the town of Dibra, which is a large Albanian town. By the way, a town that was split after World War I in half, so that they have part of it in Albania, part of it, is that right? Part of it in Macedonia.
It's
Unbelievable.
60% of the
Yeah.
grounds they are here than there.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. So what I'm saying is we want to be sure that we get the word out that Congressman Donovan is going to be one of our top priorities, that we're going to raise as much money as we can to make him look good so he gets the power that you need. And power in Congress comes from those senior positions.